You're scrolling through your phone at 11 p.m., promising yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow. You've tried every productivity hack, every morning routine, every life-changing system that promised to transform you into a discipline machine. Yet, here you are, stuck in the same cycle, wondering why you can't just stick to anything. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about discipline is backwards? What if the secret isn't in grinding harder, waking up earlier, or forcing yourself through another punishing routine that'll burn out in 2 weeks? What if the answer lies in something as simple and profound as how a lotus flower grows? A Zen master once told me something that completely shifted my understanding of human potential. He said, "Watch the lotus. It doesn't fight the mud. It doesn't curse the dirty water. It simply grows through it all, transforming the very darkness that surrounds it into something beautiful." That conversation happened 3 years ago, and it led me to develop what I call the Lotus Method. A system that's helped thousands of people build discipline that doesn't just last for a few motivated weeks, but becomes as natural as breathing. The lotus is nature's perfect metaphor for sustainable growth. It begins its life in the darkest, muddiest water at the bottom of a pond. Most plants would die in such conditions, but the lotus has evolved something extraordinary. It doesn't fight its environment. It uses it. The mud provides nutrients. The murky water offers protection. And when the time is right, it rises through the water with such grace that it emerges completely clean, untouched by the chaos it grew through. Your mind works the same way. Right now, you're living in the mud of bad habits, distractions, and the chaos of modern life. But instead of trying to escape this mud, what if you learn to grow through it? What if you discovered that your struggles, your failures, you're messy? Human reality isn't something to overcome, but something to transform. This is where most people get discipline completely wrong. They think it's about raw willpower, about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do through sheer determination. They try to jump straight from chaos to perfection, from zero discipline to running marathons and building empires. It's like trying to make a lotus bloom before its roots are established. It's not just ineffective, it's impossible. The Lotus Method works because it follows the natural pattern of sustainable growth. Just like the lotus, your transformation happens in 4 distinct stages, each one building the foundation for the next. You can't skip stages, and you don't need to. Each phase has its own purpose, its own wisdom, and its own rewards. But before we dive into the stages, let me destroy the biggest myth about discipline that's probably sabotaging your progress right now. You think discipline is about doing hard things? It's not. Discipline is about doing the right things consistently, even when they seem insignificantly small. The lotus doesn't grow 12 feet in a day. It grows a fraction of an inch every day in the right direction. That's the difference between force and flow. Between burnout and breakthrough, stage 1 is called root, and it's where most people skip ahead because it doesn't feel like progress, but this is exactly why it's the most crucial stage. In nature, roots grow in darkness, underground, where nobody can see them. They're not glamorous. They don't get applause. But they determine everything about what happens above ground. Your roots are awareness. For the next 7 days, you're going to become a scientist studying the most fascinating subject in the world, yourself. You're not trying to change anything. Yet, you're not trying to fix anything. You're just observing. When you reach for your phone instead of starting that important project, notice it. When you choose Netflix over the gym, observe what happened in the moment just before you made that choice. What triggered it? Was it a feeling of overwhelm, boredom, fear of failure? Maybe you felt a subtle anxiety about not being good enough, so you unconsciously reached for comfort. Maybe you were tired from a difficult conversation and needed to escape. Notice the pattern without judgment. Write it down if you can, but don't force it. This isn't about collecting evidence against yourself. It's about understanding the invisible forces that drive your behavior. Most people live on autopilot, reacting to triggers they're not even aware of. The lotus root stage teaches you to see these triggers clearly. Once you can see them, you gain the power to choose differently. Here's what most people discover during the root stage that completely changes their relationship with discipline. They're not lazy or broken or lacking willpower. They're just responding to emotional and environmental cues in predictable ways. Once you see the pattern, you realize you've been trying to solve the wrong problem. You thought you needed more motivation. What you actually needed was more awareness. Sarah, one of my clients, discovered during her root week that she always scrolled social media when she felt uncertain about her work. She wasn't procrastinating because she was lazy. She was seeking the comfort of familiar content when facing the unknown. Once she saw this pattern, she could work with it instead of against it. Instead of forcing herself to avoid social media, she learned to recognize the uncertainty feeling as a signal that she was about to do something important. The root stage transforms your relationship with your so-called weaknesses. You stop seeing them as character flaws and start seeing them as information. Every distraction is telling you something. Every resistance is revealing something. Every moment of avoidance is showing you exactly where your growth wants to happen by the end of. Week 1, something subtle but profound shifts. You start seeing yourself as a complex, intelligent system rather than a willpower machine that's constantly breaking down. You begin to trust that there's wisdom in your resistance, even when you don't understand it yet. This shift from judgment to curiosity is the fertile soil where real discipline grows. Stage 2 is called stem, and this is where the magic of momentum begins. The stem of a lotus doesn't fight the current of the water. It follows the path of least resistance while growing toward the light. Your stem stage is about making change so ridiculously easy that your brain can't come up with excuses fast enough to stop you. Here's the counterintuitive truth about building lasting habits. The smaller you start, the bigger you can grow. Your brain has a built-in resistance to change because change represents potential danger to the primitive parts of your mind that evolved to keep you safe. When you try to go from zero exercise to hour-long workouts, your brain sounds every alarm. It has. But when you commit to just one push-up, your brain barely notices. One push-up is almost insulting to your intelligence. Of course, you can do one push-up. But here's what happens. You do your one push-up and you feel slightly ridiculous for stopping there. So you do 2, then 5. Then you find yourself doing a full set because the momentum carries you forward naturally. You didn't force it. You just started so small that resistance couldn't build up. This principle works for everything. Want to write a book? Don't commit to writing for 2 hours a day. Commit to writing 1 sentence. Want to meditate? Don't start with 20-minute sessions. Start with 3 conscious breaths. Want to eat healthier? Don't overhaul your entire diet. Add 1 vegetable to whatever you're already eating. The stem stage is about training your brain to associate, starting with ease instead of effort. Most people make starting so hard that their brain develops a negative association with their goals. The Lotus Method reverses this. Starting becomes the easiest part of your day. And once you start, the natural momentum of action takes over. Marcus spent 2 years trying to build a reading habit. He kept setting goals like read for an hour every morning and failing within days. During his STEM stage, he committed to reading just 1 page before bed. 1 page was laughably easy. But night after night, he found himself reading 5 pages. Then 10, then entire chapters. Within 6 months, he was reading more than he ever had in his adult life. Not because he forced it, but because he made starting effortless. The STEM stage teaches you that discipline isn't about superhuman effort. It's about intelligent design. You're not trying to overpower your resistance. You're designing around it. You're creating conditions where the right choice is also the easy choice. This is how the lotus grows through murky water without getting dirty. It doesn't fight the water. It uses the water's own properties to rise. Something beautiful happens during the STEM stage. You start to trust yourself again. After years of setting goals and breaking promises to yourself, you begin to see that you can actually do what you say you'll do. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've learned to work with your nature instead of against it. This self-trust is the stem that will support everything that grows from it. Stage 3 is called bloom, and this is where you develop the kind of focus that seems almost supernatural to people who don't understand how it's built. The bloom of a lotus sits perfectly above the water, untouched by the turbulence below. Your bloom stage is about developing focus so robust that you can work effectively even when your environment is chaotic. Most people wait for perfect conditions to do their best work. They need complete silence, perfect lighting, zero distractions, and the right mood. But perfect conditions are rare, and waiting for them is a luxury you can't afford if you want to achieve anything meaningful. The Lotus Method teaches you to cultivate focus that thrives in imperfect conditions. This stage is counterintuitive because instead of removing all distractions, you deliberately practice focusing while distractions are present. You write important emails while music plays in the background. You study while there's conversation happening nearby. You meditate on a busy street corner instead of a silent retreat. Why would you make things harder for yourself? Because when you train your attention in challenging conditions, perfect conditions become effortless. It's like a basketball player practicing with a weighted ball. When they switch to a regular ball during the game, it feels light and easy to handle. During the bloom stage, you discover something most people never learn. Your attention is like a muscle that gets stronger with the right kind of resistance. Training. Every time your mind wanders and you notice it and bring it back, you're doing a rep that strengthens your focus. The distraction isn't the enemy. It's the weight that makes your attention stronger. Lisa, a graphic designer, used to need absolute silence to do creative work. During her bloom stage, she started working in coffee shops with music and conversation around her. At first, she could barely concentrate for 5 minutes. But within weeks, she was producing some of her best work in noisy environments. When she did work in quiet spaces, she felt like she had superpowers. The bloom stage also teaches you to find stillness within movement, calm within chaos. You learn that peace isn't the absence of disturbance. Peace is your ability to remain centered while disturbance happens around you. This is a life-changing realization that extends far beyond work and productivity. You start to see that you don't need to control your environment to perform at your best. You just need to develop the inner stability that makes you independent of external conditions. This is true freedom. This is what it means to bloom above the water while remaining rooted in the mud dot by the end of the bloom stage. You've developed what I call unshakable focus. Not because nothing can shake you, but because you've learned to find your center again quickly when you do get shaken. You've trained yourself to work with reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Stage 4 is called thrive, and this is where everything comes together into a way of being that sustains itself. The lotus doesn't just bloom once and then die. It thrives season after season, growing stronger and more beautiful each year. Your thrive stage is about creating a relationship with growth that lasts a lifetime. This stage addresses the biggest mistake people make when building new habits. They track progress daily and drive themselves crazy with micro fluctuations that mean nothing. It's like checking if a lotus has grown every few hours and getting discouraged when you don't see dramatic changes. Growth happens on a different time scale than our impatience operates on. Instead of daily tracking that breeds obsession and discouragement, you switch to weekly reviews. This shift in perspective is profound. Daily fluctuations that seem significant become obviously irrelevant when viewed over a week. You start seeing the real patterns, the actual trends, the genuine progress that was invisible day by day. During your weekly review, you ask different questions. Instead of, did I do everything perfectly today? You ask, what did I learn about myself this week? Instead of, why did I fail on Tuesday? You ask, what patterns am I noticing in when I struggle? And when I succeed? You become a student of your own growth rather than a judge of your daily performance. The thrive stage teaches you to celebrate progress that isn't visible yet. The lotus was growing for months underwater before anyone could see it. Your discipline, Your character, your capabilities are developing in ways that can't be measured by external achievements. You learn to trust the process even when you can't see the results. This is where most people quit. They expect linear progress, dramatic transformations, Instagram-worthy before and after photos. But real growth is more like roots spreading underground. Invisible, but essential. Building the foundation for something that will eventually be undeniable. You start measuring different things. Instead of just tracking whether you did your habit, you track how you felt while doing it. Instead of counting repetitions, you notice improvements in consistency, ease, and enjoyment. You celebrate the day you didn't have to force yourself to start. You acknowledge the moment when resistance turned into anticipation. The Thrive stage is about playing the long game. You understand that you're not just building habits, you're building identity. You're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are. This process takes time, but it also lasts a lifetime. Quick fixes create temporary changes. The Lotus Method creates permanent transformation. Alex started the Lotus Method to build better work habits. During the Thrive stage, he realized he wasn't just becoming more productive. He was becoming someone who could be trusted to follow through on commitments to himself. This identity shift affected every area of his life. His relationships improved because he kept his word more consistently. His health improved because he followed through on small daily choices. His confidence grew because he had evidence that he could change anything about his life if he approached it. With the right method, the Thrive stage reveals the ultimate secret of sustainable discipline. It's not about controlling your behavior through willpower. It's about evolving your identity through consistent action. You don't have to force yourself to do things that are natural expressions of who you're becoming. Now, you might be wondering how long this whole process takes. The truth is, it depends. The lotus doesn't consult a calendar before it blooms. It grows according to its own internal wisdom, responding to conditions, adjusting to circumstances, but always moving toward the light. Some people see dramatic shifts in 30 days. Others need 90 days to feel the full transformation. But here's what I can promise you. If you follow this method, you will change. Not because I say so, but because this is how sustainable change actually works. The Lotus Method isn't just another productivity system. It's a way of working with your own psychology that honors both your desire to grow and your need for sustainability. It recognizes that you're not a machine to be optimized, but a living system with its own intelligence, its own rhythm, its own perfect timing. Most discipline methods are built on the assumption that you need to overcome your humanity to achieve your goals. The Lotus Method is built on the assumption that your humanity, properly understood and skillfully worked with, is your greatest asset. Your emotions aren't obstacles to discipline, they're information. Your resistance isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your imperfections aren't flaws to fix, they're the mud that will nourish your growth. This changes everything about how you approach goals, habits, and personal development. You stop being at war with yourself and start being curious about yourself. You stop trying to force blooms and start nurturing roots. You stop measuring progress by external achievements and start measuring it by internal transformation. The lotus that blooms above murky water is beautiful, not despite its origins, but because of them, it had to develop strength to grow through. Resistance. It had to develop purity while surrounded by impurity. It had to develop grace while navigating chaos. These qualities don't emerge from perfect conditions. They emerge from learning to thrive within imperfect ones. Your life is your muddy water. Your distractions, your struggles, your failures, your fears, they're not obstacles to your growth. They're the conditions within which your growth happens. The Lotus Method teaches you to see them this way. Not as problems to solve, but as the raw material of transformation. When you understand this, everything changes. You stop waiting for your life to get easier before you start living it fully. You stop postponing your dreams until you feel more disciplined. You start right where you are, with what you have, in the messy reality of your actual circumstances. And you grow through it all, transforming darkness into light, chaos into order, potential into reality. The lotus doesn't force anything. It simply grows in the right way. And when you align with this natural pattern of growth, you discover that discipline isn't something you have to manufacture through effort. It's something that emerges organically when you create the right conditions and trust the process that your transformation begins now. Not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect, not when you have more time or energy or motivation. It begins with your willingness to notice without judgment, to start ridiculously small, to practice focus amid distraction, and to trust that growth is happening even when you can't see it yet. The mud is calling, the water is waiting. Your time to bloom is now.